Chapter 955. It was 5 o'clock in the morning in Xia City. He Donglu rarely got up at this hour in 10 years. Yes, it was also because he had a family dinner last night. It was rare for him to spend a night at home, so he naturally couldn't stay for long. He casually tidied himself up and tiptoed out. The house he Donglu was in was the residence of his grandfather, the former commander-in-chief of the Air Force, General He Chong. After the old man retired, he always stayed at home, doing some inexplicable research. He was close to a state where he didn't step out of his house. The old man felt that this was pretty good. It was just that active members of the grandchildren generation like He Donglu had it tough. They would be brought back for 1 or 2 days a week to be educated. They wanted to play big, but they had to be overcautious and indecisive. It was very unpleasant. He had gotten used to it over the years. As he grew older, He Donglu also learned how to adjust. When doing things, one had to learn how to first restrain and then release. First hold back and then feel good. One had to adjust the threshold of excitement. Like this, he could fly again for the next week. 5 minutes is up. He Donglu sent a message to his bodyguard, Old C, and yawned again. He followed the safe route he had already chosen and walked downstairs. The house was quiet. After turning a corner, the courtyard corridor and the courtyard became one. The lights in the courtyard and the extremely weak first rays of dawn on the horizon were taken in together. They blended together with the light that seeped through a crack in the door of a room on the other side, forming a distinct color. What the hell? He Donglu suddenly stopped. At this moment, the continuous vibrations in the air reverted to a vague voice in his ears. The old man's voice was full of energy, but it was a bit clearer in comparison. At least He Donglu could hear it immediately. It didn't make sense. He Donglu subconsciously sized up his surroundings. He was sure that this was the safe route he had chosen. The old man was old. He slept short and light. He woke up early every day, but he would usually walk in circles in the small courtyard on the other side, practicing boxing. What was he doing in the greenhouse and sunroom until the sun was high up in the sky? Young Master Lu, the unexpected greeting made He Donglu's chest thump. The hair on the back of his head stood on end. He suppressed the scream with great difficulty and turned his head. He saw the old man's professional bodyguard, Old Zhang. He didn't know when he had appeared behind him. This old bodyguard was said to be even older than the old man. He had followed the old man for nearly half his life and was a true confidant. He was also a person who had almost become a demon. He Donglu truly felt apprehensive in his heart. He forced a smile. Old Uncle Zhang, my grandfather woke up early enough. Who's disturbing him so early? Mr. Zhang is talking to the commander-in-chief. Old Zhang maintained a certain distance from these relatives of his. The Mr. Zhang he spoke of was actually He Chang's eldest son, He Donglu's father, and the chief of staff of Xia City's coastal defense force, He Buzheng. When He Donglu heard this, his calf cramped even more. He subconsciously wanted to turn around, but Old Zhang was right beside him. If he turned around like this, he would be like a thief. It was truly too awkward. After a moment of hesitation, the old man's voice from the sunroom became clearer. If you want him, then give him to me. He was young, but he was a world-renowned professor. It was just a matter of having one more or one less appointment letter. It's good for a few of them to be students and teaching aides. It can be considered as practice outside the school. It's better than them being drowsy in class. Next, it should be He Buzheng speaking. His voice was a level lower, making it hard to hear clearly. But the old man quickly brought it up again. Don't let people be scared out of their wits. I was the one who approved your enlistment in the army, and I took care of you a few times against your conscience. But you're used to doing things for others. You rise and fall, and in the end, you can't become a commanding officer. You have to run for election when you come back. Let's not talk about whether you succeed or not. In my opinion, if there's such a good thing, you might as well send a few of the monkeys at home over. It's almost the 22nd century, but their brains are still spinning in the box of the last century. You have to go too. You should go the most. It's also because I'm old, and I have more pessimistic things. I feel that I won't live long enough to reform myself. Otherwise, I would have gone too. Holy crap, this old man is getting more and more long-winded. He's inexplicably giving long-winded speeches. Little old man, you have to hold on. He Donglu was confused as he listened. He felt that the situation was far from good. His scalp and ears itched. He no longer hesitated. His heels automatically spun, and he was about to walk back. Who knew that there would be repeated bangs from the stairs behind him? A coarse kid would jump down in 2s and 3s and yell. "Brother Lu, you're early." Shoo. This time, He Donglu was truly startled to the point that his entire body was covered in cold sweat. He hated that his hands were too short and weak to cover that person's mouth. The kid behind him was called He Dongliang. He was his third uncle's younger cousin. He was still in middle school. Recently, he had been infatuated with extraordinary strength. Every day, he would wake up early to temper his muscles and bones. He had a body full of muscles at such a young age, and he was still clamoring about paying respects to a famous teacher and learning a peerless skill. It was said that the old man was seriously considering it. He was truly insane. Speaking of which, although He Donglo's position in the family was that of a big silk pants, this coarse kid in front of him could knock him out of the hallway with his brute strength. However, due to his rich love history and uncommon aesthetics, he had accumulated quite a few people over the years. There were also quite a few brainless fans in the family. The kid in front of him was one of them. It was just that today, this kid's brainlessness truly wasn't the right time or place. No matter how He Donglu tried to stop him, it was still too late in the end. On the other side of the sunroom, the sound of footsteps could be heard after a while. The half-closed door opened, and He Bushing appeared at the doorway. His round face, which had always been regarded as amiable by outsiders, was currently stiff. He didn't give his son a good expression. "You, come here." He Donglu inwardly cursed, "I'm done for." Then, he fiercely glared at He Dongliang. The latter also knew that he had stirred up trouble. He stuck out his tongue and was about to turn around. Who knew that the old man in the sunroom would raise his voice? "All of you, come over and accept the mission." "Yes, Commander." He Dongliang was a hothead in the end. With a roar, he walked over with vigor. He Donglu increasingly had no reason to refuse. He could only brace himself and walk towards the sunroom under his old man's cold gaze. Just as he arrived at the doorway, he heard the old man's chuckle. "Little bastard, you've persisted for more than half a year, right? Your willpower is up to standard. Who are you going to find to learn skills from?" "Of course I have to find someone with great ability. We also have such conditions." He Dongliang puffed out his chest and belly, full of confidence. He Chong grinned and laughed heartily. His mouth was wide, his nose was straight, and his face was rosy. Although he was nearly 90 years old, he still had a lot of black hair, and his body was still very robust. In his early years, he had experienced the aberration and the 3 wars. His family had died early, and he only married and had children for the second time when he was almost 50 years old. As a result, most of his grandchildren were still young. Truthfully speaking, he rather doted on them. Especially a hothead like He Dongliang, who was the most to his liking. Therefore, he deliberately teased him. "You want to smash your old man's little treasury?" He Dongliang snorted disdainfully. In this day and age, how many capable people can use money to smash things? He Chong was greatly amused. That's right. Little Dongliang's idea is the best. It seems you have a plan. That's right. There's no need to beg others. When I get back, I'll mention it to Sister Yuan. Isn't my brother-in-law in the palm of my hand? He Donglu let out a pft, but he suddenly felt something was wrong. When he looked again, as expected, his old man's face had already darkened. In front of an old man, why would he be afraid of a little old man? Why don't you say that I put my arm around his shoulder and did the whole thing with him? Wow! He Dongliang's eyes lit up. The moment he Donglu spoke, he regretted it. Especially when he saw the chief of staff his long face, he hated himself for being stupid. He had actually blocked the bullet for he Dongliang, this little bastard. He quickly went back to make up for it. It's just a description. That guy has a weird temper and it's not easy to get close to him. But these few months, I've been hanging out with his friends in the circle. Second brother Xia, third brother Hu, bamboo pole, papercut, octopus. You can't just mess around with one or two of them. He Buishing commented coldly, a wine and meat friend. I'll endure my ass. If he Donglu was truly afraid of his father, then he wouldn't be a big silk pants right now. He immediately rolled his eyes. If I want to be friends until the end of my life, I still need you to make up your mind, no? He Buishing's face truly darkened. Shooting your mouth off. You think yourself clever. In the end, he Dongliang was young and inexperienced. He was a bit muddle-headed. He Chong waved his hand. Go train. Good habits can't be easily changed. Bad habits can't become inertia. Oh. But the master you want most likely won't have the time to teach you. You have to ponder a bit more. He Dongliang gave a thumbs up. I know. I have a backup plan. He Chong laughed in spite of himself. You even have a plan B. Of course. Isn't there an old saying? If I can't be his disciple, I'll be his junior. He has a master, even though he only teaches him body arts. The room was silent for a second. He Chong slapped his thigh and laughed. In your dreams. Get the hell out of here. He was really driving him away. He Dongliang had long wanted to slip away. How could he care about showing off after receiving the imperial edict? He didn't care about his own cousin. He turned around and ran. He Chong's gaze turned to He Buishing after the little fellow ran out the door. He said, You unenlightened brat. You're in high spirits. You're just watching the excitement. Those who have truly entered the door probably only hate that their brains aren't enough. If you're going to send people, then send elites and properly learn things. He Buishing grunted. He could hear that he was still a bit hesitant. He Donglu curled his lips. It was just that this little action was discovered by his father. He Buishing had always found this son of his to be an eyesore. He immediately reprimanded, Let's not talk about other families. You can only dig out some unbearable things from your eyes. He Donglu was already in a bad mood. Now he was hit in the face with a stick. He was clearly being used as a punching bag. He couldn't hold it in any longer. His temper flared up and he laughed. Chapter 957. He Donglu slammed the door in anger, or perhaps he was flustered. The sound of his footsteps quickly faded into the distance. Bodyguard Old Zhang closed the door expressionlessly, restoring the sunroom to its previous quiet atmosphere. The glimmer of light on the horizon could not overcome the brightness of artificial lighting. The transparent glass ceiling was also painted snow-white by the light. He Chong narrowed his eyes and extended his hand. Even Donglu can't hide your thoughts from me. He Buishing's ashen complexion gradually returned to normal. He lowered his eyelids and sat back down next to his father. This kind of thing has always been done or not done, done or not done. That's right. It's a joke to hide it too deeply and make people misjudge it. Speaking of which, you really are afraid of the other side. He-chung was not prepared to judge his son's level of political operation. He only found the most important part, being in Xia City, under their eyelids. I'm afraid of the flood of the deep blue world drowning me. He-Buishing did not hide anything. He answered bluntly. Donglu said that Professor Luo is a great Buddha. These words are true. Ouyang and Wujiong must be worshipped well. But you also know that no matter how strong they are still golden bodies under the heavens. Li Wei, on the other hand, has to look beyond the heavens. He-chung opened his mouth wide and laughed hoarsely, a nest of toads looking at the sky from the bottom of a well, but they still have a human brain. That's quite amazing. This was clearly not a good evaluation. He-Buishing could only pretend not to hear. But He-chung would not let him off so easily. In your eyes, what is the current situation? What do you want it to become? Crane and clam fight, fisherman reaps the benefits. When immortals fight, mortals suffer. Or are you saying that you want to play the legend of the three kingdoms? He-Buishing had yet to think of how to answer when He-chung said, last night, Joseph contacted me. Lieutenant General Joseph. In this circle, it was impossible to cause a misunderstanding when Joseph was mentioned, even if it was a common name. After all, there was only one person in the world who could be stationed at the forward base on Europa and become the next Marshal of the Aerospace Army. He-Buishing was immediately startled. What did he say? Just some gossip. Nothing too substantial. But why don't you find it strange that Joseph didn't call you? Why did he call me, a retired old man? After 2 seconds, He-Buishing replied, you are his former superior, and in the military world, no, in every aspect, you are still the pillar of the He family. He-chung grinned again, looking at the situation. I should throw half of my wealth into the LCRF and struggle for another 30 to 50 years, instead of taking care of these flowers and plants at home. But I'm old and retired. Sooner or later, there will be a day when I don't even have the strength to pull your ears. Before that, I have to remind you that as soldiers, apart from playing politics, we also need to know how to fight a war. Dad, He-chung pursed his lips. Suddenly, he raised his leg and kicked his son hard in the face. You're still in coastal defense, and you're the chief of staff. Are you clear about the enemy? Have you figured out the level yet? Did you get the location right? How big were they? If you don't understand these things, you're not even qualified to be a staff officer, let alone fight a war. He-Donglo's footsteps were hurried as he rushed out of the main entrance. He finally had the courage to look back. Luckily, he didn't see the little old man send people to capture him. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. At this time, his car had already arrived by his side without a sound. The car door automatically opened. He-Donglu let out a breath and sat in the back seat. His personal bodyguard, Old C, was already sitting upright on the other side. He silently bowed in greeting. Bao Qing, the driver in front, turned his head and asked, Master Lu, where are you going today? He-Donglu sighed. He was inexplicably bored to death. He didn't want to talk, but at this time, he glanced to the side and saw the video system in the back of the car turn on. This was nothing. He had spent quite a bit of time inside. His bodyguard and driver watched movies and played games to pass the time was nothing. It was just that, hey, this guy. He-Donglu pointed at the projection screen and shouted. Wasn't the inexperienced young man that the camera pointed at, Luo Nan, who caused him to be reprimanded and criticized? Old C responded, apologies Master Lu, He-Donglu didn't care about this. He pointed and asked, is this a video from before? That can't be right. No, it's a live broadcast. Ha! This is an internal channel of the military. It's mainly targeted at burners. News travels quite fast. There are also people doing live broadcasts of situations that don't involve secrets. He Donglu interrupted him and went straight to the point. In T City? Xia City's military did this. Old C was slightly startled, but he immediately confirmed, it's in T City. The host is Major Shi Xinhe. He's currently training in T City. He received a temporary order to cooperate with Professor Luo to carry out an experiment. It's not secret. To be precise, he obtained Professor Luo's permission to record and broadcast. That fast. He Donglu was truly shocked. Didn't the old man and the little old man not decide to give it to anyone? They've already started. Not yet. The personnel aren't all here yet. It's just a trailer right now. He Donglu rolled his eyes. The military is also playing this kind of game. Honestly speaking, from He Donglu's point of view, the live broadcast over there was too straight. It lacked technique and didn't have any content for the time being. It just followed behind Luo Nan's butt and watched how he played with the debris and sand on the beach. There was really nothing to write home about. But looking at it from the most realistic perspective, the current Luo Nan could cause chaos in the He family with just a name from several thousand kilometers away. Naturally, he had the qualifications to do so. Old C, a calm character, had opened up a live broadcast room and continued to pay attention. The military's live broadcast didn't have a count of the number of viewers, but for Old C to be alarmed, it couldn't be that small. If this was in the past, young master, he would most likely spit at this sort of thing. It would be hard to avoid a few sour words. But he had just stood up for that fellow at home. He couldn't turn the situation around for a while. Professor Luo. Cough. What's Luo Nan's situation right now? I'm saying, you're looking at him with such eagerness. What's his position in your circle? Old C was silent for a moment before replying, this isn't something I can evaluate. So what if I talk about it? Of course, He Donglu wasn't satisfied with this answer. He was just about to continue questioning when he saw Luo Nan start to converse with that Major Shi something on the live broadcast screen. Under the influence of the whistling of the sea breeze and the crashing of the tide, the sound quality could only be described as okay. One could hear it clearly, but one couldn't understand it. It was normal for a layman to not understand. He Donglu wasn't surprised. He just asked Old C, tell me. What's he talking about right now? Chapter 958. Old C grunted, Shi Xinhe is asking Professor Luo how to arrange his time in a while, how he needs the people coming later to cooperate, and what effect he wants to achieve. Professor Luo said that the experiment on the beach is only the first step. He might need to go to the sea to see the results. Stop. He Donglu promptly called a halt to this meaningless transfer that treated him like an idiot. You don't need to translate this. I can understand. I want to know about the more specialized things. Old C hesitated for a moment before changing the direction of translation. According to what Professor Luo said earlier, his experiment this time is based on a type of fantasy configuration theory. But this time, he isn't prepared to involve too much theory. Instead, he is going to demonstrate a configuration that leans toward practicality. In fact, this isn't a lecture. It's just an impromptu live broadcast of the experiment. He won't specifically explain it. When the time comes, it will depend on each person's ability to understand. You don't need to explain this. He Donglu powerlessly waved his hand. Could it be that he was acting like a retard? I just want to figure it out. Is there any value in what he is expressing right now? How does it compare to the ring of blood and intent from last time? Forget it. I'll just ask an expert. It was really too difficult to ask a professional bodyguard to explain extraordinary theory. He Donglu tossed and turned for a long time before he finally found the correct train of thought. He began to flip through his address book, considering which ability user he knew was more like an expert. Yes, it was more reliable to find the circle around Luo Nan at this time. It was also more suitable to close the distance between them. Within the circle he worked hard to manage, the one with the highest cultivation was undoubtedly bamboo pole. Moreover, he was also on the mental side. He was just right. But. The important turning point had to be emphasized 3 times. That fellow bamboo pole appeared to be greasy and lecherous, but he was actually impervious to everything. He was shrewd and powerful. During this period of time, his status in the Xia City branch had risen with the tide as he entered the architect sequence. His influence was rapidly rising. He Donglu was a bit apprehensive to communicate with him alone. He didn't feel that he could take advantage of him. How about he switched to someone else? The names on the address book skipped over a few grids as they quickly swept past. As for the others, they either didn't have a professional match or they didn't have a good personality. They could drink and chat, but it seemed that they weren't friends yet when it came to asking professional questions. After thinking it over, He Donglo 2 figures appeared in Lu Cheng's mind. One was Xie Junping. That fellow had become an ability user. He'd practically broken away from the circle of Xia City's hedonistic playboys. But his family background was there, and he was in the business circle of Xia City. The He family's name was still useful to him. As for his cultivation, it didn't seem to be too good. However, he had a good teacher, so he should be able to make it. As for the other person, He Donglu almost didn't think of him at first. It was only when he saw the address book that he made the connection. That chubby, ordinary-looking middle-aged uncle. It was too cruel to put it that way. He seemed to be a loner. He didn't remember his real name. He only knew that his nickname was Papercut. This person didn't stand out in Luo Nan's circle. The reason why He Donglu paid attention to this person was because this person seemed to have participated in the earliest development of the Bloodwool bracelet's external talisman paper. Of course, the main developer of the external talisman paper was still Gao Tianshi. However, Gao Tianshi was a veteran B-rank psychic. His connections in Xia City were deep, and his status was transcendent. He was someone who could directly deal with He Donglo's old man. He wasn't as easy to get along with as Papercut. As for Papercut, He Donglu knew after a few encounters. He had a kind face but a soft heart. He was honest, patient, and easy to bully. It was just that his cultivation was mediocre. It seemed that he played support. He was mediocre in all aspects. Even though he was psychic, it was hard to look forward to having him explain things. He Donglu thought for a moment and decided to contact Xie Junping first. He had a bit of a psychological advantage when it came to this person. He wanted to see if he could use Papercut to contact the supposedly powerful Dean Wan. However, the call didn't go through. This made things a bit awkward. Could it be that it was too early? He looked out the window. That was indeed the case. But time waits for no man. He hesitated for a moment before switching to Papercut. This time, the call went through quickly. Hello. The other party's voice was a bit muddled. It was clear that he had just woken up from his sleep. Cough, brother. Papercut. The other party mumbled a few times. He probably saw the caller ID and became a bit more clear-headed. He Donglu, young master He. Brother Papercut, are you still asleep? He Donglu quickly understood when he sensed Papercut's current state. It seemed that Papercut didn't know about Luo Nan's live broadcast in D City. This made things easier. He Donglu thought of an excuse on the spot. He didn't need to think too much about it. The news itself was the best reason. He Donglo's attitude became more and more natural. Brother Papercut, I was looking for bottle just now, but that fellow wouldn't pick it up no matter what. It was a bit urgent, so I... Oh, he's doing his morning class right now. He needs to focus. Cut off all communications. Chapter 959. Did you take too much last night? Who's looking for me? Looking for you, my ass. Hurry up and send me the address. Otherwise, I bet you'll regret it. My God, Papercut's remaining sleepiness was completely dispelled by He Donglu. He confirmed the time and finally made a painful decision. He struggled out of bed and prepared to properly deal with this overly excited hedonistic young master. I said it earlier. It's the welfare home. Dean Wan's welfare home. I've never been there before. What about the name? Where's the map? Lawn Town. I think so. It's in the Forest Wall district. Papercut finally surrendered completely. I'll send you the map. He Donglu slapped the front seat and gave the driver an order. I'll give you 10 minutes. Forest Wall District, Lawn Town's welfare home. The car quickly started, but Old C calmly said, 10 minutes is impossible. It will take at least half an hour to get to the western suburbs from here. Then half an hour it is. Not a second more. He Donglu was still unclear what this coincidental discovery would bring. There was only one thing he was sure of. This was much more interesting and useful than the debauchery he had planned. Papercut knew that He Donglu wouldn't arrive anytime soon, but he wasn't in a hurry. He just put on a pair of pants and went to the bathroom to freshen up. He squeezed some toothpaste as he comforted Papercut. Hey, little brother Donglu, for the sake of the secretary, can you talk about the main point? I'll help you think of an idea. You said just now, who was looking for me? He Donglu let out a laugh. The crucial information advantage actually brought him the thrill of crushing his IQ. However, Papercut's temper was really good. He still had the patience to accompany others in pedantry. He Donglu didn't want to keep him in suspense. No one was looking for you. Someone mentioned you. It was that super worrisome boss Luo of yours, oh. Papercut had just stuffed his toothbrush into his mouth when his movements froze. He Donglu couldn't see Papercut's appearance, but he could feel the rapid change in his mood. He grew happier. He wasn't broad-minded, so he immediately used giving them a taste of their own medicine and snorted, humph. So it's not that I slept late. It's that you guys didn't wake up early enough. Luo Nan started his class early in the morning in T-City. It seems like there's quite a scene. Start the class. Papercut's voice suddenly rose an octave. He nearly bit his toothbrush in half. He Donglu subconsciously grinned. It seems like I have to practice some configuration techniques and give lessons to that project team member. The main thing is still to do experiments. Right now, I'm broadcasting it live. Puff, puff. Papercut she spat out the half-melted toothpaste and tossed her washing utensils aside without bothering to rinse her mouth. Why haven't I heard anything? Zhang Yingying is with him. Didn't I tell you? Then why are you talking about me again? Which channel? Where's the link? Link? He Donglu asked Old C. Soon after, he gave him a piece of unfortunate news. You guys are unable to access the military's internal channel. F***CK. Papercut cursed loudly. He picked up his shirt and walked out of the room. He maintained his connection with He Donglu, and he entered Luo Nan's friend group on the Psychic Wave Network through the Hexier. Last night, Zhang Yingying had sent him information and data related to the syncopator, as well as the subsequent discussion. However, there was no news at all regarding the live broadcast He Donglu spoke of. Zhang Yingying, hurry up and wake up. Boss Luo's live broadcast is something you don't care about. The military is stuck in our heads. Zhang Yingying didn't reply in the first instance, but there was an octopus that had gotten up early or hadn't slept at all. It sent a sluggish emoji. It was all Zhang, but it was useless. Oh no. Papercut only realized that he had made a mistake when he was outside. The lower half of his body was only wearing a pair of large underpants. He hurriedly flashed back and carelessly put them on. He grabbed the waist of his pants and skipped out. But this time, he saw Nurse Wang of the orphanage draped in clothes when he reached the hallway. She stuck half her body out from another room and stared at him expressionlessly. The breathing of some children in the rooms on both sides began to become chaotic. They were clearly alarmed by Papercut's uncontrollable and loud voice. "Oh my!" Papercut exclaimed in a low voice. He instinctively extended his hands to put his palms together in apology, but he forgot to pull up his pants. Fortunately, his body was wide and fat. His waist and crotch blocked it, so he didn't make a big fool of himself. However, he was still in an extremely sorry state. At this time, He Donglo's voice was transmitted over again. He seemed a bit hesitant. "Yes, I feel like you're a typical negative person." Papercut stood on his tiptoes, gritted his teeth, and held his breath. He waited until he reached the entrance of the orphanage before he opened his mouth. "Share, transcribe, remake, whatever. Immediately send the video over for me to see." For Papercut, this was a rare and urgent tone of voice. "You'll have to wait a bit." He Donglu was willing to help, but the operation required time. Papercut's reasoning was understanding, but his emotions were unforgiving. His heart felt like it was being scratched by a cat. In a few short seconds, a layer of sweat had already accumulated on his forehead. At this time, the friend group had already exploded. First, there was a large queue with a sluggish expression. Then Zhang Yingying reacted and left a message. "I got in touch. I'm going to find out." After destroying the queue, there was no follow-up for the time being. Nearly everyone had been awakened by the explosion. They were speculating, discussing, and tagging Papercut, the first-hand news provider. Papercut originally wanted to join in, but his heart was truly overgrown with weeds. He Donglo's few words had stirred his mind into a trance. What is Nanster teaching? Why did he mention me? Typical negative person. Does it have to be this serious? Papercut walked to the entrance of the orphanage in a jumbled state of curiosity, ignorance, anticipation, and even worry. Suddenly, someone called out to him. "Uncle Paper, Uncle Paper." "Ah, Wei Wu." The one who called out to Papercut was the most promising kid in the orphanage, Di Wei Wu. He was also the adopted son of Papercut's old friend, Di Donghua. This kid had quite the backbone. Even if Di Donghua would complete the procedures to adopt him with just a word, he was still willing to live in the orphanage with the other orphans in the orphanage. Di Wei Wu was also a diligent kid. Every day, he would wake up early to train, rain or shine, to build a foundation for his future cultivation. Seeing the sweat on his head, he had most likely returned from a round of training. "Uncle Paper, are you leaving now?" "Oh, I have a bit of business." Papercut stopped mid-sentence because He Donghua had begun to transmit data. It was not a live broadcast, but a transcribed video. To increase efficiency, I'll send it one clip at a time. Damn. Papercut decisively turned around and walked back. "Uncle Paper, Uncle Paper." Di Wei Wu felt baffled as he quickly caught up. The reason for Papercut's choice was very simple. This was a commercial society. No matter how good Xia City's infrastructure was, it was impossible to achieve full coverage for a rotten place like the recycling stratum. The orphanage was a public place. It was already the area with the strongest signal. He Donglo's decision to send the video in segments was very wise. The first video, which was a few dozen seconds long, was quickly transmitted. Since Papercut was connected to the psychic wave network at the same time, the video was sent over. It was not suitable to be projected onto his retina, so he could only choose to play it outside. Di-Wei-Wu, who was playing the role of a follower, went, "Wow. Brother Luo Nan." Papercut ignored the child's messy way of addressing each other. He just stared at the projection area. He listened to the information being transmitted. In the video, there was a simple and stable background of a beach and a focused image of a human figure. Aside from being able to confirm Luo Nan's existence, there was no other value to it for the time being. The only thing that was truly meaningful was the voice. "Chief, why do you need so many people?" So many burners. Chapter 960. The one speaking should be today's host, Major Shinha. Papercut had dealt with him quite a few times, so he had an impression of him. He knew that Shinha was a very smart fellow. Luo Nan's answer was very concise. "It's convenient for experiments. Normal ability users can't do it. From the perspective of experimental design, it's inconvenient." Luo Nan's answer made people feel stuffy. It looked like this live broadcast really wasn't a class. At least for now, it was purely a casual chat. Luckily, Shinha was able to stick to it. "How is it inconvenient?" "It's not tidy." "Not tidy." Papercut didn't understand. He naturally hoped that Shinha would ask a few more questions. But Di-Wei-Wu was the first to express his dissatisfaction. "Uncle Paper, why are you staring at Brother Luo Nan's but like that? Where's the sound?" "Here." Papercut used the external playback function to deal with the troublesome little fellow. He looked forward to what would happen next. However, Shinha, the temporary host, exposed the butt of a military burner. He forcefully jumped to the other side. Burners are more orderly, but this orderly refers to. This time, Luo Nan's answer was a bit longer. There are more rules of manual selection. They can be used as relatively unified basic modules, and they can be arranged appropriately. There are fewer variables. Papercut let out a stifled laugh, drawing Di-Wei-Wu's attention. "Uncle Paper, what are you laughing at?" "I'm laughing at how your brother Luo Nan's mouth has become smelly. This is mocking the burner's modification technology, right?" Papercut was a bit uncertain when he said this. It seemed that Luo Nan didn't have any prejudice against burner technology. He had always been researching and utilizing it. There was a period of time when he used the burner simulator to learn, and he spent great effort to modify the deep blue walkers. Papercut saw all of this. And at this time, Di-Wei-Wu blinked. "Really? Hee. Papercut scratched his head. He was finally able to free himself from the video a bit. He discovered that he and Di-Wei-Wu were stuck in the entrance hall of the orphanage. It was quite silly. He grabbed Di-Wei-Wu's shoulder and continued to walk inside with the little fellow. Having learned his lesson earlier, Papercut didn't dare to go upstairs and disturb others. He found a place to rest their feet in the hall on this floor. The two sat on a bench and continued to peek their heads out to watch. The video continued to play in the projection area. The progress bar was already very close to the end, but what made Papercut suspicious was that his so-called negative example appearance had yet to arrive. Luo Nan was calmly piling sand on the beach in the video. From time to time, the camera would swing back and forth, and one could see that there was already an undulating pile of sand on the beach. The amount of work involved was not small. Luo Nan's skill level was quite high when it came to piling up sand. He didn't need to truly make a move. He just pointed through the air, and the relevant area bulged and deformed. In the eyes of a child like Di-Wei-Wu, there was quite a bit of mystical color to it. In fact, Papercut was paying close attention as well. A mental type awakened who excelled in using the mind to interfere with matter, such as Papercut himself, could accomplish this as well. However, it was very difficult for him to be like Luo Nan, lifting something heavy as though it were light. He thought back to when he taught Luo Nan the soul strength activation technique. Luo Nan couldn't even handle a paper man. Now that he thought about it, it felt like a lifetime had passed. Papercut was a bit absent-minded while Shin had continued to ask, since there are rules, what are the rules for ordinary ability users compared to burners? Shin's words had the suspicion of starting a fight, but he also had the drive to get to the bottom of it. Plus, this question really suited Papercut's intentions. Luo Nan, who had his head buried in piling up sand, finally turned around. He clearly had some time to think before saying, "This isn't something that can be explained clearly in a few sentences." Then say a bit more. Of course, Papercut was saying these words from several thousand kilometers away. At best, he was trying to make Di Weiwu laugh. Shin didn't dare to continue with Luo Nan's words. He couldn't see it through the camera, and he could only stare blankly at the actual situation. A few seconds later, Luo Nan finally followed up, "Let me give you an example." Okay. Shin's expression couldn't be seen, but his voice had the suspicion of maliciously acting cute. He was also trying to coax Luo Nan to say a bit more. Over at the orphanage, Di Weiwu chuckled when he heard this. On the other hand, Papercut felt his face, no, his entire body stiffen when he heard the word example. Only his heart thumped loudly in his chest. He had received Hidonglo's spoiler warning beforehand, so he couldn't help but think of something. Isn't this the place? Papercut saw that Luo Nan's eyes were a bit vacant in the camera. He had the posture of reminiscing. Last year, I was in Xia City. I had just entered the circle not too long ago, so I lacked general knowledge. Many friends in the branch took turns teaching me. I have a friend who taught me soul activation techniques. Soul activation. You mean the transcendent ability to control special equipment and carry out long-range attacks and defenses, right? Shinha was a qualified supporting character. He was knowledgeable, responsive, and able to quickly follow up with the main point. Luo Nan nodded. You're talking about the control class. Back then, Brother Papercut, the friend who taught me this technique, said that soul activation techniques are divided into the activation style and the control style. The control style is more practical. Wow, Uncle Paper. Brother Luo Nan flipped your card. Di Weiwu was both surprised and excited. He shouted loudly, his voice shaking the roof. Papercut disliked the noise he was making and his words were preposterous. He wanted to reprimand him, but when his lips moved, he felt that his mouth and throat were dry. He had to use a lot of strength. His throat squirmed with difficulty before he found some saliva to moisten his throat. He swallowed it down with a gulp. The thought of scolding Di Weiwu had long since disappeared. There was only one thought left. This time, my reputation is going to be lost to the entire world. In the video, Luo Nan wouldn't change his tune just because of Papercut's nervousness. He continued to speak very naturally. I learned this technique in order to experience the mutual interference between the mind and the material. I was muddle-headed about many things at the time. Everyone said whatever they said. But now that I think about it, there are some things that are worth questioning. Finished. At this time, the progress bar of the video hit the end. It broke. It broke right here. Uncle Paper, what's going on? Di Weiwu was enjoying watching the excitement. He was obviously dissatisfied that the video suddenly broke. F***ck. He did it on purpose. Papercut smashed his fist on his knee. He nearly choked on the saliva he had just swallowed. The video started early and started late, but it just had to break right here. If that kid Hidonglu didn't do it on purpose, then Boss Luo would have become a well-behaved baby. He nearly dialed the number again and cursed out loud. Luckily, he saw that the second video was almost finished downloading. I'll endure. Papercut calmed down. First, I'll send the video I just finished watching to the group. After a few minutes of fermenting, the group completely exploded, and the shockwaves began to spread across the psychic wave network. However, there was still no news of Zhang Yingying. The video Papercut sent over only served to add fuel to the fire. Bamboo Pole was indeed the smartest one. He felt that something was wrong the moment he saw the format and duration. Transcribed. This mover's work is too rough. We want the live stream link. Live stream. Live stream. Who's calling Zhang Yingying right now? My line has been busy. She's communicating with Boss Luo, right? Both sides are busy. Why isn't Luo Ui playing his cards according to the norm? The replies in the group were stirred up, but they soon ran out of steam. Needless to say, they all went to watch the video. Papercut suddenly discovered that it was quite foolish of him to waste time on this. His thoughts spun, and he returned to his own side. The second video had already finished downloading. There was still a third and fourth video to follow. He was too lazy to waste any more time, so he just shared these files with the group. One could imagine how many people who were watching the live broadcast were giving him likes. If the military's live broadcast system had a reward function, it would certainly explode. It didn't matter at the time, but now that I think about it, Brother Papercut's words weren't appropriate. He compared the activation style to the control style. He believed that the former was more suitable to be used as support, while the latter was the main combat power. Perhaps he was wrong from the root. I feel more and more that the activation style, which simulates spirituality, is more representative than the precise control style, is more representative. Sure Shinha took 2 seconds to digest this before asking, what does it represent? Yeah, what did it represent? At this very moment, Papercut, who was suspected to be a negative example, became all the more focused. It wasn't just because he was closely related to Luo Nan's description. It was also because he was looking forward to it. With Luo Nan's current level, even a careless sentence might have its own unique value. It might even have some sort of guiding significance. Plus, Papercut was analyzing him right now. Even if it was a bit lacking in privacy, if Papercut really said 1, 2, 3, 4, he would be able to publicly execute Luo Nan, let alone now. Papercut pursed his lips and held his breath. He blocked out all information from the outside world and only watched the contents of the video. If he cut it off now, he swore that he would strangle that kid He Donglu to death. I feel that it is too rash to artificially differentiate the things of abilities and traits before they are explored in depth. Just like the regulation that you were particularly interested in just now. Without exploring to a more fundamental level, all differences are just shallow expressions. Just like this beach. It doesn't have any special meaning before I start to shape it. If it does, it's just the sand itself. Papercut was a bit stupefied. Sure Shinha understood a bit. At the very least, he needed to display this state in order to have a deeper discussion with Luo Nan. However, there is no essential difference between ordinary ability users and burners at the most fundamental level. So what you're saying is that we should explore the structure of an ability. Luo Nan extended 3 fingers. Level, structure, and leap. All 3 aspects must be considered. Whether it is an ordinary ability user or a burner, their regulation is established on a more fundamental level. It depends on the adjustment and optimization of one's ability structure, as well as the possibility and direction of the leap of the existing body and soul system. Sure Shinha cautiously asked, can you explain in more detail? At this point, the video flashed, and the progress bar reached the end. Papercut's heart tightened. Luckily, the latter part of the video had finished downloading this time. The AI continued. In a normal sense, the foundation of our lives is an unchangeable and established fact. It's like this beach. Even if I piled sand into a castle, it would only be a sand castle in the end. It wouldn't change into any other nature. Humans, or cultivators to be exact, are a bit better. At least there is hope for change. Hello. Luo Nan's voice cut off again. This time, there was a call from the outside. The caller was undoubtedly Zhang Yingying. Papercut felt stifled in his chest, but he could only endure it. Luo Nan was talking to Zhang Yingying in front of the live camera. Yes, it's still on the beach. Not on the beach. Just do an experiment. It's not easy to find people to cooperate. Yeah, come over if you want. We haven't officially started yet. The call ended after a few sentences. Luo Nan faced the camera again. This time, he still had some conscience. Where were we just now? Cultivators have the hope to change the foundation of their lives. Shi Xinhe accurately summarized and expressed his original meaning. It's more appropriate to use the word leap. It's like this. A beach area suddenly bulged by Luo Nan's feet. The sand at the bottom was like a gushing spring. It went from low to high, slowly rising up. Every grain of sand was as smooth as a water droplet. They hissed and formed a beautiful sand spring bouquet. Right now, we basically believe that life is a product of a single leap. It goes from the purely material plane to the life plane. We can assume that these ordinary grains of sand have become the living substance. They have formed a series of lives, allowing them to possess basic functions. This is the first end. The first end. Luo Nan didn't explain in depth. He just continued speaking. When life takes form, it needs to maintain its life structure, maintain its basic functions, and allow life to continue. It needs to absorb energy from the outside world, reproduce, and live. It forms a basic drive of desire. This is the second end. It seems that I'm going to enter the domain of anthropology and sociology. I'll just go straight to the conclusion. Faced with the memories of nature and complex society, humans have formed a series of experiences that are endlessly accumulated and transmitted, but are relatively fixed. This is the third end. And on the basis of experience and experience, there is a deeper level of application of intelligence. It forms a high-level state represented by logic and spirituality. This is the fourth end. This is a rough division. It can be considered to be 4 small levels. Shi Xinhe finally found an opportunity to interject. But why is it called end? Luo Nan had a matter-of-fact appearance. Life is full of contradictions. You can't ask it to be like a machine. It must work diligently and earnestly for a predetermined goal. It must work to the end. Shi Xinhe had a pensive look. He perfectly summarized nonlinearity and reaction. There are practically no segments that require you to use your brains. So for every task I say, you guys will do it. Yes, sir. No one, including Hood, dropped the ball for the time being. They all displayed the style of soldiers. However, Luo Nan didn't have the awareness of a commanding officer. He just followed the prescribed order and made arrangements. First, we need to format the domain. You guys support the domain and maintain it in that state. The group of people looked at each other in dismay. Luo Nan frowned. Is there a problem? The 7 experimental subjects quickly communicated for a bit. In the end, Hood, who was the most capable and had the highest status out of all the volunteers, became the spokesperson. Mr. Luo, can you wait a moment? Not all of our people have arrived. Right now, the groups are in disarray. Luo Nan was very surprised. I want the standard. The formatting of the domain. What does that have to do with the groups? You guys form the groups first. The people behind you can come over and fill in at any time. In theory, this is the case. However, there are differences between us. The main issue is the dynamo core. There are also some issues with authority. Hood was very frank. He adopted a serious attitude to solve the problem. Maybe we need to obtain some authorization. That's not necessary. Mr. Luo, please believe in our sincerity. Luo Nan shook his head. I'm saying that there's no need to go through so much trouble. Let's use you as the benchmark. Can you open the formatting domain? Hood didn't move. He just smiled bitterly. Mr. Luo, I said that due to the differences in the versions we want to build, that's a problem for me to solve. Ha! Shi Xinhe, who had been filming from behind, walked over at this time. Chief, the differences in the versions do exist. Especially with the rapid changes in the versions of the Dynamo core these days. It's hard to avoid conflicts between the two settings. Luo Nan turned his face and stared at him. The greatest value of the standard array lies in the standard. If you guys can't connect it seamlessly, then it's the same as completely obliterating its value. The standard array. Shi Xinhe was a bit stupefied. Luckily, Luo Nan's words weren't too hard to understand. He was dazed for a moment before he quickly followed along. We really do need a unified standard authorization process. Luo Nan shook his head. The standard has always been there. It's just that some people are superfluous. It's inconvenient for others. So let's use you as the benchmark for the time being. Shi Xinhe was truly stupefied. He only responded after 2 seconds had passed. Chief, I'm afraid it won't be easy for me to support the framework of the formatting space by myself. He was a researcher after all. Hood had already forcefully stuffed back the words that were on the tip of his tongue. The other fellows didn't care. Someone immediately raised his hand. T-City's Coastal Defense Special Forces. Second Lieutenant Wilson. This was a man with a full beard that looked more like a pirate than a soldier. Luo Nan's gaze swept up and down. Okay. You're up. Wilson grinned. He went forward and extended his hand, imitating Luo Nan. And so, the 4 people squeezed into a small circle. It was like a pep talk before a soccer match. Unfortunately, it lacked hot-bloodedness and excitement. They were more apprehensive. Crackle. A very clear explosive sound rang out. The place where the 4 people joined their hands together suddenly erupted with a flicker of a lantern. The format fire, which had been steadily increasing in brightness all this time, suddenly rose in brightness. Then it clearly dropped. It appeared to be flickering between brightness and darkness. Hey! Zhang Yingying let out a low cry from her throat. She forcefully suppressed it back down. Her reaction was extremely representative. An incompatible reaction has occurred in the intergenerational architecture. Bold Jeff timely explained in the video conference. Did he fail? At least 2 people spoke at the same time. They couldn't wait any longer. Before Jeff could respond, dozens of tiny flying ant-like objects could be seen floating outside of Luo Nan's body. They buzzed, and in the next second, it was as if they were attracted by the flame in the center of the 4 people. They coiled around and cast themselves toward the place where the light was the brightest. They were really thrown in. However, the format of light, which was transformed from blazing life energy, didn't seem to possess any lethality. It allowed these little things to be thrown in and out. They revolved and shuttled back and forth. It was like a magic show. The only visible change was that the flickering flame light became stable and thick once more. It reflected on the faces and bodies of the 4 people in the surrounding with a seemingly substantial layer of light. Is this a smokescreen? Those little things. They're the syncopators. Is he really controlling them? What principles are they based on? There were some investors who continued to strongly doubt Luo Nan, but most of them leaned toward a more realistic level. Because of this, even these questions were pressed toward bald Jeff. Jeff wasn't Yen Hong. He wouldn't grant every request, and he wouldn't speak without thinking. No matter how anxious the participants were, he, the commentator, remained as immovable as a mountain. In fact, most of his energy was focused on communicating with the key characters. He had already sent Hood, who was directly under the Apocalypse Laboratory, a few dozen monitoring and testing projects. He requested that they be carried out properly no matter what. Chapter 964. Hood pursed his lips. He ignored the glare of the intense light as he stared at the area where Luo Nan and the other three's palms converged. He stared unblinkingly at the increasingly dazzling mass of flames. He was already considering how to shamelessly join the fray first. Hey, you! Hood suddenly came to a realization. At the same time, he felt Luo Nan's calm and clear gaze. Your strength and authority should be the highest in this group of people. You don't have any objections to being a support, right? Luo Nan's rare concern for humanity made Hood feel uncomfortable from head to toe. He didn't forget that his own identity was the most awkward one right now. However, Hood was burdened with heavy responsibilities. He couldn't care about anything else. He quickly shook his head, no problem. Professor Luo, feel free to make the arrangements. Then that's fine. You join in first and familiarize yourself with the structure. I'm about to withdraw. The rest of you, join in after 10 seconds. Hood's eyelids twitched, but he didn't say a word. He took a step forward and extended his hand forward. The format of fire in the center, which had just recovered to a relatively stable state, suddenly increased in brightness due to the connection of his aura. It was like a powerful lamp that normal people would find it hard to look at directly. It was like a gust of hot wind had been set off under the spread of the powerful light. The dozens of scintometers that had been shuttling through the format of fire were instantly blown away. A few of them burned and exploded midway. They looked extremely miserable. Luo Nan didn't say anything, but Hood's heart was beating fiercely. He had already done his best to estimate and speculate the energy structure of this cluster of format of fire when he was observing from the outside. He had considered the node he was connecting to. He didn't want to destroy it. Absolutely not. It was just that the large amount of photons that appeared explosively in the air the moment he entered and the energy that leaked from them gave him the feeling that he had accidentally damaged some delicate yet fragile sealing device. It was as if he had poked through a paper lantern. How could something so fragile be called a format domain? Hood didn't feel it was appropriate to evaluate anything. He just hurriedly suppressed the incorporeal energy structure that seemed to be on the verge of falling apart along with the other participants. As for the examination items that Baldy Jeff had arranged, he had forgotten about them for a time. Luo Nan withdrew his hand at this time. Lead. Shi Xinhe's shout was quite miserable. Aside from the panic of watching the core structure collapse, he also hoped that Luo Nan would lend a helping hand. Luo Nan didn't even shift his gaze. Zhang Yingying's lens was very sensitive. She immediately followed Luo Nan's line of sight and looked around. Streak after streak of distorted light paths appeared on their bodies and continued to spread out. Soon, they connected with the paths floating in the air, breaking away from the two-dimensional structure that circulated on the surface of their bodies. They possessed an even more prominent penetrative power. The visible region was like this. What about the invisible region? More accurately speaking, what about the inside of these people's bodies? It was impossible for people not to think too much. The blazing radiance radiating from these people on the beach really did seem like they were burning. The surroundings of the beach seemed to darken. In reality, this was due to the glare of the focal area of the lens being too dazzling. Quite a few people felt their vision blur after watching for a long time. They didn't know what was going on, so they could only ask professionals. What's going on? What in the world is Luo Nan trying to do? A certain representative of an organization participating in the video conference completely lost any thoughts of deep thought. He just wanted to know the final answer. Out of control. Bald Jeff simply spat out a single word. Right now, there was no need for Hood, who was trapped in the situation, to give an answer. A preliminary conclusion could already be obtained through the changes in the data of the remote monitoring. What out of control? Are they going to die? Enter a state of mental derangement. Bald Jeff furrowed his brows, but he still accepted this unprofessional description. He explained once more, the vital signs of those being monitored can be considered stable. The out of control I'm talking about is mainly referring to the energy and information structure of the human body that is dominated by the dynamo core. Can't you explain it a bit more clearly? Are you guys trying to recite the rebirth mantra at a time like this? Bald Jeff shot a cold glance over. He continued to use his own pace to explain, the current situation is that all of the burners on Zeolite Beach have a portion of their strength that has broken away from the dynamo core's regulations. Simply speaking, they are still healthy and full of vitality as burners. However, this vitality has already broken away from the dynamo core's original settings. They can completely do some things that are impossible to calculate within the existing models. They can create a few unpredictable troubles. The members of the conference were silent for a few seconds. Finally, someone understood the deeper meaning behind Bald Jeff's words. So what you're saying is that the so-called out of control doesn't mean that those fellows on the beach have entered a state of mental derangement. You're just saying that our control has collapsed. Bald Jeff didn't give a direct answer. He put his hands on his hips and thought for a few seconds. Then he lowered his head to reality. Forget it. Right now you guys find a more clear-cut area of focus. For example, the sandy beach beneath your feet. Sure Shinha, you're the main axis. You decide. Yes. Do something to this sand. Use the domain you guys are supporting. Sure Shinha's scalp was covered in sweat. He looked at the sand beneath his feet. His mind was nearly blank. As for the one that left the deepest impression, that's right. That ball of sand. Bang! It was clear that the result of using too much strength was a muffled sound that nearly shook the entire beach beneath his feet. The sand gave rise to fine waves that spread in all directions. It was so much so that even the seawater that surged to the head of the beach was pushed back a bit. However, Luo Nan's previous arrangements were also shaken. Some of the mounds of sand were trembling. Some had even collapsed. Wow! The blood flame order has suffered a huge loss this time. Zhang Yingying, who was in charge of the camera, could not help but spit out a sentence. This natural beach of high quality might not be able to withstand such torment. The camera quickly shifted. Luo Nan maintained his posture with his hands on his hips. He just tilted his head to express his helplessness, but in the end he didn't say anything. In any case, a portion of the accumulated danger had been eliminated, right? As for the true victim, Meng Chong of the Blood Flame Order, he was currently on a call with someone. Meng Chong merely raised his head to glance at Zhang Yingying when he heard her voice. Soon, he sank into a rapid and frequent conversation. Comparatively speaking, he was a bit more sensitive to the camera. Look at the main point. Focus on it. Zhang Yingying's simple camera shift caused the emotions of her friends to surge. Aren't you filming a romance movie? I dare you to say that again. I'll immediately turn off my phone. Sister Yingying, Auntie Zhang, we were wrong. In this unconventional and short exchange of live broadcasts, the camera shifted back to the high-brightness core area jointly constructed by the 7 burners. She looked at these experimental tools that were neither segmented nor assembled. They stood frozen on the spot. Could this even be considered a core? Zhang Yingying obviously had objections regarding whether or not it was a core. The true core was Luo Yuanwei, okay? This monkey's movements were too cool. Also, why did she feel that the most crucial element wasn't the burners or the glowing tungsten strands, but something else? Her camera shifted slightly, giving the scintometers floating in the air a quick and eye-catching focus operation. An eye-catching arc of light was flung out from the high-brightness area of the 7 burners at this time. It instantly bent and circled around the surrounding air, darkening and disappearing a second later. And in this 1 second that was neither long nor short, the arc of light connected at least 3 scintometers. And every time it connected, there was a clear turning point. Perfect. Zhang Yingying gave herself a thumbs up in her mind. She could practically imagine the extreme clamor behind this camera. Advertisement master photography achievement of the inner world achieved. Asterisk. Omega asterisk, asterisk not mentioning how Zhang Yingying madly added more scenes to the syncopator, the danger level of the core area in most people's eyes decreased. And after 2 or 3 meaningless and extreme movements, Xinhe began to grasp some basic skills. On the beach, a fountain started gushing out. It was purely made up of fine sand. As its height grew, the amount of sand involved also continued to increase. However, it formed a relatively balanced cycle with the beach below. Many people who had been watching the live broadcast from the beginning quickly came to a realization: Xinhe was imitating. He was imitating Luo Nan's demonstration class not too long ago. The first step was to pull out a sand column from the beach. The next step was to turn it into a snake that coiled around it, but it was really difficult to control. It's better to stabilize it first, Hood said in a low voice, subconsciously wanting to help. As soon as he said that, the sand fountain, which was originally controlled by Xinhe alone, suddenly slowed down and gradually took on a clear shape. Hood's words served as a reminder that they, as experimental tools, were still rushing over when Luo Nan demonstrated. However, they had certainly watched the live broadcast. They more or less understood it, but they still had a general impression of it. This was a relatively clear goal. 2 or 3 seconds later, the 7 people began to cooperate. This was a kind of convergence on the level of consciousness. Originally, there were established procedures for this method of telepathic shaping. Everyone had learned it before. But now, a profound and unrestrained change had occurred in the way energy and information flowed. The established procedures were no longer useful. The slightest difference could lead to a deviation of 1,000 miles. Even if they held the same thoughts, referred to the same situation, and pursued the same goal, there would always be some differences on the level of thinking. They had to compromise, amend, and form a general tacit understanding. A consensus was reached in the first segment. There was still the second, third, and fourth segments. Soon, everyone discovered that this was an extremely torturous process. The consensus reached in the first segment was very likely not the beginning of tacit understanding, but the beginning of conflict. Right now, they could feel and utilize far too many configurations. Every single configuration seemed to conform to past operating procedures. All of them could form logical, complete, and clear-cut train of thought. This was a situation that would drive people with dysphoria crazy. We have to reach a consensus. Don't bet on that dog's hit tacit understanding. Hood finally couldn't help but speak once more. You're Xinhe, right? You want to be the captain and the main axis. Don't you need to communicate? Of course I need to. The sweat on Xinhe's forehead had already stuck his hair together, but his voice was even clearer. It crushed the bewildered and uneasy mental state from before. If we just need to make a sculpture, then we can communicate and amend it. That's enough. Then the dynamo core will take care of everything. But what we're doing right now, isn't it an experiment? What experiment? This is Chief Luo's problem. What we need to do is to support a formatting domain. He paused for a moment, then emphasized, a formatting domain that is qualified, has no generation restrictions, and can operate on its own. Shi had turned his head to look as he spoke. A faintly discernible trail of light lingered in the surrounding air, faintly forming an enormous bowl-shaped hemisphere. Dozens of centimeters floated above this curved surface. They were like the stars in the vault of heaven. They seemed to be unfettered, just coldly staring down. In fact, every participant knew very well that the reason why they were able to indulge their life energy so excessively up until now, breaking through the limits of the dynamo core, and still maintain relative order, so much so that they maintained a basic level of agreement on a logical level, was because of these little things like flying insects. They gave specific interference at specific locations, at specific times. If it weren't for these little things, they would probably have already become moths in the candlelight. So, Shi was a bit at a loss for words at this time. He roughly knew what he should do, but he still didn't understand what he should do next. At this time, Luo Nan began to clap from outside, drawing their attention. Everyone, I know what you want to do. However, what Shi has said is correct. The ideal structure of a four-sided, four-layered superconfiguration isn't a simple model that can be piled up. How about this? I'll give you guys a ready-made one. Spread out a bit. The 7 experimental tools subconsciously separated. Half a second later, the stiff and twisted sand pillar by their feet began to wildly dance like a snake. Then it bent and piled up, gradually forming edges and corners. Clearly, Luo Nan was manipulating the grains of sand. But the problem couldn't be explained so simply. This was because in the eyes of Shi and the others, under Zhang Yingying's sensitive lens, the centimeters floating and flying in the air were clearly dancing and resonating with the grains of sand. There were also those crisscrossing rays of light. In fact, everyone watching this scene could more or less discover, the sand pile structure that was gradually taking shape was currently interacting with all the elements related to the burners in their field of vision. Herman suddenly opened his mouth in the video conference. If we send out an action team to take measures against Luo Nan, will we end up like those 7 idiots over there? No one answered him, including Baldy Jeff. Herman actually answered his own question. That's right. One has clearly fallen in already. Several seconds later, a ball of sand that was nearly identical to the one Luo Nan had previously displayed took form and floated in the middle of Shi and the others. They could see the millions of grains of sand that formed the ball of sand. They revolved orderly on the smooth surface of the sphere. However, they didn't revolve in a single direction. Instead, they revolved in a complex circulatory system similar to the circulation of Earth's atmosphere. The group of people felt their scalps go numb just by looking at this. Are you ready? I'm going to let go. The 7 experimental tools really were about to collapse when they heard similar words. The key was that Luo Nan did what he said he would. His control power, which was like an extension of his arm, instantly broke away. The originally perfectly round ball of sand immediately transformed into an extremely ugly shape. Moreover, it sank down. The 7 people in the circle practically squatted down at the same time. They extended their hands, wanting to catch it. Luckily, the ball of sand didn't hit the ground. It dangled dangerously. You guys can be at ease and boldly try. Really? Even if there's a problem, the first thing to collapse will be the centimeters. Luo Nan encouraged them from outside the circle. But before his voice could fall, a centometer ignited once more above their heads. It exploded into pieces amidst the intense light and flames. Someone in the circle let out a cry of alarm. It was the pirate-like officer, Wilson. He had made a bad start, causing at least 2 people to let out short, low cries. These elites of the military had undergone strict training and selection. They had gone through trials and tribulations to complete the transformation of burners. They behaved like a group of young girls who had just stepped into society. There was no other way. Luo Nan could only console them. It's okay. Aren't there a few dozen more? You guys are safe before they all explode. He looked at the time as he spoke. Their current progress was a bit behind his expectations. Perhaps he should plan things out and open up a second battlefield. He should let some steps proceed simultaneously. He turned his head to look at the thick fog above the sea's surface. He began to ponder over a deeper problem. It was just that he was thinking deeply. His words were a bit casual. The fragile equilibrium that was completely constructed in nothingness trembled once more from the stimulation of his words. The scintometers exploded 4 or 5 times in a row. Luo Nan spread his hands helplessly. There's no need to be nervous at all, okay? This is just a temporary team-building activity. Isn't it good to treat it as a group bouncing a ball? Just drop it on the ground and start over. Believe me. This beach that you guys are on is the most suitable environment for you guys right now. You guys should be like fish in water here. Your wishes will come true, and everything will go according to your wishes. Come on, smile. What Luo Nan obtained were 7 awkward and stiff smiling faces. What I mean is that the most important thing to do in order to accept this theory is to do a good job in segmentation and reconstruction of the foundational components. Zhang Yingying automatically took the role of a supporting actor. She inserted an advertisement in passing. Do we need to use a syncopator? Of course it's good to be good at using tools, but just a syncopator isn't enough. We need to maintain a certain degree of objectivity. After all, it's hard to avoid a certain degree of deviation when we segment ourselves, especially when it comes to the mental plane. Then what should we do? We can consider a relatively objective environment for usage. We can consider a research method that leans more towards the application type. Luo Nan was neither impatient nor impatient. He spoke slowly and tirelessly, we know. I'm guessing that even if cultivation theory and civilization develop to an extremely high level in the future, the vast majority of people at the bottom and middle levels should still have their clairvoyance and sensing precision within the micrometer range when it comes to individual cultivation. It's impossible for them to touch upon the nanometer level and below in their individual cultivation experience, let alone drive and mobilize them. This is logical. But we all know that the gene is the material foundation of the inheritance of life. The diameter of a gene is usually only 2 nanometers. It will only be more difficult to segment the lower layer of the life substrate. In this way, segment to the lowest layer and carry out reconstruction is a correct line of nonsense. It will become a false proposition on the cultivation plane in reality. Zhang Yingying grunted twice. That's right, it's like this. But it seems like you're also talking nonsense right now. Do you have any hard heads? Luo Nan laughed. The most basic method is to invest a large amount of manpower and capital to carry out basic research. Cutting-edge instruments and high-level researchers are used to carry out real-time monitoring and research of the cultivation of living beings. There's no fear of failure. There's no fear of mistakes. There's no fear of starting over. Luo Nan was still smiling at the beginning, but his words gradually became more and more serious. Especially the direction of logical reasoning. It corroborated with his memories of the relay station. The relevant scenes and fragments became more and more vivid. He vaguely saw Liang Lu standing in front of him with a solemn expression. Laws are laid out like a pass. Corpses are piled like mountains. It requires the correct direction of evolution, a perfect research system of genetic science, powerful social mobilization, and extremely bitter sacrifices, including lives and morals. No one is willing to pay such a great sacrifice. But this is necessary if one wants to cross the natural barrier of racial evolution. Fortunately, Luo Nan took the initiative to change the direction. What I'm saying is just to express one thing. The things that I'm going to talk about next are all on the applied level. They won't touch upon fundamental theoretical research. I'm unable to talk about things that I don't know. Preface, Introduction, it's really long. Zhang Yingying couldn't hold back from ridiculing him. But she had to admit that after Luo Nan's lecture, basic research in the field of supernatural powers, especially the related directions, had increased quite a bit. Moreover, this guy definitely wasn't just saying whatever he wanted to say and hiding a script in his head, trying to stir up trouble again. She had to continue playing the role of a supporting character. Alright, everyone understands. Today, Professor Luo will be lecturing on practical skills. Which aspect? Luo Nan flexed and extended 3 fingers in succession: hierarchy, structure, and ascension. Without basic logic, it's impossible to talk about hierarchy and ascension. Then I can only talk about the middle part. He withdrew his index and middle fingers, leaving only his thumb. He wiggled it twice. Right now, we can talk about how to make a fuss about structure. We can try to segment supernatural powers. We can indirectly derive them. We can carry out self-perspective and analysis methods. Zhang Yingying's gaze swept over the strongest source of light on the beach. She blinked and had an innocent expression. Professor Luo, are you going to teach us how to segment burners? Before her voice even fell, powerful curses were unleashed from all over the world, even from many regions that exceeded this scope. Luo Nan laughed. Nope. Actually, I don't recommend starting with burners or the dynamo cores. It's not because they're bad, it's because they're too good. Zhang Yingying continued to act cute maliciously. I don't understand. Luo Nan was still gesturing with his thumb. Sister Yingying, do you know about the thumbless theory? Yeah, I think I've seen it somewhere before. Luo Nan spoke neither too fast nor too slow. He had been teaching for over half a year, and his experience had grown richer and richer. He had gradually forgotten what stage fright was. This is a metaphor put forth at the end of the last century. It is said that in the process of human evolution and development, nimble hands played an extremely crucial role. The evolution of the thumb brought about a stable grasping ability, and it possessed a decisive power. However, in the current stage of human evolution, let alone the thumb, even the hands aren't that important anymore. But in that special stage, without the evolution of the thumb function, can the hairless monkeys humans really obtain their current accomplishments? A more typical example is the scaffolding outside a building when it's built using traditional methods. When the project is finally completed, the only thing people see is the skyscraper. Who would care about those steel pipes and bamboo strips? It seems like we don't really use them now. But in the last century, the century before that, without those steel pipes and bamboo strips, how could we talk about high-rise buildings? This saying is still valid in the field of supernatural power research. When we face a highly integrated result, we only know that it is necessary, but we are often unable to find its sufficient and necessary conditions. This is because the once important but now useless link has been hidden away. It has even been streamlined. We can only see high-level reality, but we can't see low-level history. We are even more unable to see the underlying structure and order within the evolution of history. So from this angle, the standard array, the configuration of the dynamo core, is too high-end. It's too streamlined. It's not suitable. It seemed to make a lot of sense. Zhang Yingying was convinced by Luo Nan. She followed his train of thought. Then what's better? How about the more basic condensation ring? Last time you... Luo Nan coughed again. In a certain sense, it's more condensed than the dynamo core. Zhang Yingying blinked. Did I accidentally screw the boss over? Then let's use the blood intent ring fortress. The blood intent ring. You forged it yourself. There's no problem with that. Luo Nan still shook his head. The structure of the fortress has a certain degree of integration. It's the product of an extremely high-level configuration thinking. And it leans toward the mental plane. But then again, this is a very good group order structure. Though it's forged from soul strength, the subjective thoughts are nearly chaotic after taking shape. It embodies the objective order of the mental plane. It's very rare. You can try it yourself on the mental side. Use the syncopator to do a few rounds of segmentation. It should be beneficial for grasping the logic and state of the birth and death of soul strength. Zhang Yingying patiently waited for him to finish his advertisement. Only then did she retort, "You can't do this, you can't do that. You need to find an angle to cut in, right?" Luo Nan's gaze spun around the beach and the mist of the sea. In the end, he pointed at the camera. If you want to talk about a more suitable one, then let's continue using Brother Papercut as an example. Papercut's excited mood was no longer there after Professor Luo flipped him over again. His chest let out a thump, and he felt all sorts of mixed emotions. It was very complicated. Di Weiwu patted Papercut's shoulder and sighed. "I don't know if this is a good thing or not. Get the hell out of here, you little brat." Yes, Papercut was able to discern the main meaning of this curse. Nervous. Really nervous. Professor Luo Yuan, please be lenient with your words. Speak human language. Luo Nan was very innocent. There are people who like to hear it. We need to think for the majority of people. And didn't you want to talk about application? Why are you talking about theory? I need to talk about the general sequence of events. The next demonstration is to demonstrate the structural deduction and changes of the middle life level based on the general trend of the three major levels. I feel that this is the direction of application of soul activation with great potential. Luo Nan rolled up his sleeves in all seriousness. Zhang Yingying didn't think much of it at first, but her eyelids twitched when she came back to her senses. You're just a mass of water vapor. Aren't you afraid of being seen through and humiliated by playing this sort of operation? Oh, it seems like there's nothing to be afraid of. Luo Nan's movements were rather calm and natural. Right now he really was like a magician about to perform. He extended his hand and stroked the sand beneath his feet. Next, we'll use the logic from before on the sand table of the material level to demonstrate a few structural combinations. I'm doing my best to follow the nature of the life level. The theory I'm referring to can be simply called fantasy configuration. The basic operation and interference methods come from the techniques Brother Papercut taught me. Of course, I'll have to use the logic of fantasy configuration to edit it a bit. You don't mind, right? I don't mind, Zhang Yingying answered extremely straightforwardly. It was Luo Nan's turn to roll his eyes. I'm asking Brother Papercut. I'm waiting for a private message. Luo Nan's voice had yet to fall when Papercut's confirmation arrived at the same time as Zhang Yingying's low sweep of her leg. So fast. It seems like it's still early in the morning over at Xia City. Hee, it's because of you that their nest exploded. But then again, aren't we the lucky ones? Zhang Yingying very maliciously changed the scene, giving a short shot of the 7 burners on the beach not too far away. Between them was the sand ball. It was so flat and bumpy that no regular shape could be seen. The sand ball represented a nervous process of adaptation. It formed a stark contrast with the casual and natural conversation over here. Luo Nan chuckled. He didn't say much. Then, he truly began his demonstration and explanation. Right now, I'm going to use the blessing of soul strength to give this material sand table an initial condition. It doesn't matter if the individuals on it are alive or not. They must have a foundation of mutual induction and interaction. This is also the starting stance and basic principle of soul activation. Sufficient, multi-angle, and multi-level interference. Luo Nan's gaze moved downward as he spoke, and Zhang Yingying's camera followed closely. A portion of the beach by his feet suddenly darkened in color. It appeared to be a bit moist.